T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You're listening to The Twisted 10, bringing you original and unique host-created top 10 lists, recorded live in world-famous Cocoa Beach, Florida.
All right, so here we go, Tack. This is
so exciting.
This is kind of fun. So this is a bonus episode of The Twisted 10. This is not a top 10 list episode.
Wait, so we're not doing a list?
We're not doing a list tonight. Nobody has a list on this one. In fact, this is just me and you. We're going to narrate this episode a little bit.
Yeah. I came to rehearsal. I knew what we're doing.
So for our listeners out there, this is a bonus episode as a response episode, basically, for when we invited on Jaron and David. They're flat Earth believers, hardcore flat Earth guys, and they presented the top 10 challenges for the science community as a whole. All right, so that was episode number 66. So if you haven't heard that episode yet, I highly encourage you stopping this bonus episode.
Stop it right now.
Go back and listen. Listen to that whole episode in its entirety. It's not all nonsense about flat Earth. They actually bring some other challenges to the episode for the science community that they want to have proven to them. That's kind of their point.
Yeah.
That was their point. Granted, they do have a stance, and there's a little bit of talk about flat Earth stuff on that episode, but their top 10 list that they hosted, and they did a great job, I'll be honest. They did really well. Like them or hate them, whatever your perspective is. David and Jaron are two stand-up guys. They not stand-up comedians, they're stand-up gentlemen.
Right.
They are...
Or as best they can with the gravitational pull as they see it. Or,
yes.
Or the lack thereof.
So... in this episode, what we've done, so let me recap. Basically, they challenged the science community to provide proof of 10 different things, 10 different random things.
Yeah.
All right. And I'll be honest, I put the call out there to the community, all right, to the other podcasters and our friends in those communities around the world. Some of them doctors, PhD doctors in science and in their own specialties. And most people said the same thing that you hear over and over and over, which is, that sounds fun, but frankly, I don't have time and I don't want to be associated with this kind of belief, this kind of challenge, because these guys are flat earthers. That comes with a serious taboo. So we're taking this response episode a little bit different. This is going to be more of a reaction episode, and you're going to hear from some of the other podcasters in our community about the reactions to the Flat Earth episode that we hosted. We want to first right off the bat, we want to thank the guys from Hysteria 51.
For sure.
So if you don't know what Hysteria 51 is, it is another podcast run by Brent and John, and also their
Brent Hand, John Goforth.
Yep, Brent Hand, John Goforth, and also their third host, which is Cbot or Conspiracy Bot, which is the best host. I mean, let's face it.
Maybe. We're still up for debate.
Hey, Conspiracy Bot is my favorite.
Oh, gotcha.
Insert Conspiracy Bot's response to that now, John. No, I'm just kidding. We love those guys. They're awesome. They actually gave us the introduction to David and Jaron, which are the Flat Earth guys, back on episode number 66 of the Twisted 10. So,
because it started off, we were guests on Hysteria 51, along with David and Jaron.
Yep.
And it was a big flat Earth round table, very formal. Like it wasn't just us.
It was literally a debate.
Yeah, and it went on for 3 hours?
It was a long show.
3-hour episode. And it wasn't just us. I mean, me and Adam, we both kind of work at the Space Center, sort of do different things.
None of those have anything to do with propulsion or
no, absolutely not.
Actual formulas of how gravity works or any of that shit. I do IT and Tact does physical security.
Right,
so
and we were like nowhere. We were not representing NASA or SpaceX or the Space Center,
and we don't
or
that
the Kennedy
tonight either.
Or nothing. Yes,
yeah, we made that very clear.
Yes,
listen, our jobs probably do listen to this, so we need to make sure that the separation of our actual career jobs and this fun little hobby podcast that we do are distinct.
And so we were guests on Hysteria 51, and Well, let's put it this way. Adam and I were basically the stupidest people in the room on the round table. We were just like, because he had like, what did he have? He had like a scientist on the show. They had some astrophysicist on the show. I mean, they had some smart dudes.
And honestly, David and Jaron are really intelligent guys too. Especially Jaron, man. That guy knows his shit.
He does. Because they have a canned answer for everything.
Well, no, they do. But
they've heard these questions a billion times.
I agree. However, it takes an intellectual person to be able to respond in the timing that he did for some of those questions. I agree
that they're not like these stupid like tinfoil wearing hat dudes.
No.
No, you can tell they're educated and and self-educated. No, I'm just kidding. See, I'm giving my own response because I didn't get a chance to do that the 2 times we've sat down with them.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Hysteria 51 wanted to keep it very formal, and then when we had them on the show, you wouldn't let us loose, and you wanted us to be humble and polite.
You know what? I kind of regret that because I know that.
No, it's fine. I get it.
I know that when Jay used to be part of the show, he was on here and he was ready to just unleash. Yeah. Pardon the pun.
He shut down.
But
he was like, I'm done. I'm not. No.
Yeah, he bottled up and kind of was quiet. But I mean, there was a reason for that. We wanted to make sure that those guys got their list out, got their plugs out because they were our guests.
They were our guests for sure. I get that. So, but I would like to have an unleash episode.
Well, if you've got something you want to unleash about, now is the time to do it. If you want to unleash,
see, it's hard because they're not here, or I'm not listening to it.
I gotcha. Well, maybe we can have them back on. Maybe that's something. Maybe at the end of this episode, they won't want to come back. I was
because it is a very fascinating topic to look into. If you've never done it, you get into a Timesuck. If you ever do it, there's a plug right there.
Yep, that's for Mr. Dan Cummins.
Which his reaction is coming up in this episode. That's a little, what's called a
teaser.
You're
good at teasing, Tack.
I am. I was doing some research the other day. I just happened upon, and I want to say come across, I happened upon on YouTube, someone said flat earth proof, and I was like, I fall into this clickbait all the time. Because I was like, let me see what they got. If it's about SpaceX or whatever, like I work there, I know how shit goes, Or anyway, I just watch it because I'm interested. Anyway, I'm watching a couple, going through another, and of course it leads into another one, something similar topic. And about 3 videos in, whose fucking voice do I hear coming across the goddamn video?
No.
It's fucking David. And he's having a conversation with like 2 other people, and his voice is so distinct.
Yeah, you can hear it very easily.
And it's just funny. I was like, oh, this motherfucker again. Like, oh God. But they're big in the industry. And from what I understand, they're making money. I don't know.
Hey, good on them. They found a niche and it's working for them.
Right. I mean, let's make up something. Right. And say that we believe it. And then ask for
the water in the oceans is not liquid. Let's go with that.
It's not liquid.
Yeah, let's go with that. Or we can go with the stars in the. No, see, that's kind of get it into the cosmos a little bit. Yeah, no, I don't know. I can't even think of something so bizarre. It's hard. It's hard.
I think all the crazies have been taken up.
So listen, out of all the conspiracies that are out there, the flat Earth to me is one of the silliest to really be enthralled with, like supporting the flat Earth. And I know that is going to get us some hate, but guess what? You're dodos. So, all right. So let's summarize this episode. So what you're going to hear is 3 different clips. All right. These 3 different clips were submitted by our friends in the podcasting industry as a response episode to the Flat Earth episode number 66, where we had David and Jaron host. So what you're going to hear is 3 different clips. The first one is none other than Mr. Dan Cummins from Timesuck himself. He will be presenting just his summary and his recap. Following him is going to be Mr. Clay Groves. That's with the Fish Nerds podcast. And dude, Clay goes way over and above. Clay found not 1, but 2 PhDs to come on his show and help provide some commentary. Yes.
That's awesome.
To follow that up is going to be our friends up at the Hysteria 51 show itself. Mr. Brent Hand and John Goforth and Seabot. Seabot makes an appearance on this episode, Jack, which is awesome.
Because he's not hold back.
No, he does not hold back. And then I'm going to close the show with a little a little bit of Adam's introspective onto this entire topic.
Is it going to be one of those like Jerry's last fucking whatever?
Not so much. It'd be more like Jack Handy's from Saturday Night Live. It'd be more like that. No, I'm just kidding. So without further ado, these are some of the response clips from our friends in the industry. And we've got more than these three. However, these three are the ones that really summarize, I think, the best that we want to portray. Yeah. Right, to our response episode for this. Mm-hmm. So first up is Mr. Dan Cummins with Timesuck. So check out his clip here.
Hey, Twisted 10 podcast. This is Dan Cummins from Timesuck. Thanks for inviting me to the rebuttal of the flat Earth activists, David and Jaron. I'm not going to respond to the specific top 10 challenges. I just want to address the overall premise of the flat Earth argument and the people who make it. It reminds me of Scientologists, where there are very intelligent Scientologists, very talented Scientologists, such as Tom Cruise, John Travolta, the founder L. Ron Hubbard, very intelligent, talented man, and proof that being very intelligent doesn't stop you from engaging in complete and utter illogical, ridiculous horseshit. Just like very, very talented people can be Scientologists, it doesn't make Scientology a valid religion. It's still a ridiculous cult founded in nonsense, founded in the ramblings of a frustrated science fiction author who wanted to make a religion and was talented enough to do so and get enough people to go along because he was very charismatic. You guys, David and Jared, you make some interesting points. You use a lot of big words. Too bad the overall goal you're trying to achieve is just lunacy. You're just I don't know if you deep down actually believe this stuff in your core, or if you're just doing it for attention on some level. I listened to some of your podcasts, some of your Flat Earth podcasts, and you talk about how people's reaction to this after laughing is anger, and that the anger, it comes from this place of them being fooled and feeling like, people don't like to be fooled, and they've been fooled their whole life about the Earth being around. Yeah, it's that. Or it's people just being angry that people like yourselves are wasting energy and time on something that's just ridiculous and arguing. You're like a little kid on the playground who, just won't let go of like, yeah, but that's the way I play it. Yeah, but here basketball is played that's the 3-point line and that's 2-point line. Well, I play it, it's always 4 points. It's always 4 points the way I play it. It's like, okay, but that's not the rules. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And they just won't back down. And then everybody gets the ball taken away because of your nonsense. Like, on one side of this argument, let me just say it this way. On one side of the flat Earth argument is every fucking legitimate scientist alive today. That's one side of the argument. That's the Earth is round side. On the other side are pseudo-intellectuals like yourselves who are able to memorize big words, but not able to comprehend just basic logic in life in general. And just people like Tila Tequila in the B.O.B. and just other people who did not study enough science growing up. There is no reason for this conspiracy. There's no agenda. It doesn't make any sense. No one's making a lot of money convincing everyone that the world is round. No one's being duped because there's no goal to be duped, right? There's no why? Why are they doing this? You can just say whatever nonsense stuff you say, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make. If you were in favor of the population being fooled, like if you were some one world government conspiracist, I still wouldn't agree. But at least there would be some validity to your premise. At least there would be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense on a level of a small group of people could make a lot of money getting everyone to believe this lie. Your lie is so idiotic that there's no agenda to be had. So, just stop. A lot of times I like to say agree to disagree, but you guys are just willfully being ignorant. You have to know that on some level. I hope, or I guess, maybe you won't. History has plenty of fools who die believing just inane horseshit. But thanks for making it entertaining, I guess. And other than that, just go away. The world has enough idiocy without you guys adding to it. And you're obviously intelligent enough to know better on some level. So I guess, I'll kind of end on a shame on you guys note. for just pushing this fucking nonsense with so much effort that you clearly could accomplish something interesting if you put that effort in a different direction. And Twisted 10, kudos to you guys for having these guys on your show. That was gutsy and very entertaining. Love you guys, love the show. Will not be listening to Flat Earth ever again after what little I heard. We'll be listening to you guys. Thanks guys.
Oh man,
Dan.
That
All
guy.
right, so that was Mr. Dan Cummins with Timesuck. Obviously,
that guy rocks, dude. That guy rocks.
he's a step above the rest of us. He's one of the top 10 in the comedy podcasts that are out there. An amazing podcaster, great show. We highly encourage you guys to go check it out. By the way, in this little bonus episode, there's not going to be any ads or commercials or anything. Not that we don't love our sponsors. However, this episode is not really our typical, so it's just a.
If this is your
pure
first
audio.
time listening to Twisted 10,
yeah, go
this
back.
is not the episode to listen to.
100% agreed. We probably should have said that at the beginning, but
Probably,
well,
but
that's
as long
okay.
as you write it in there as bonus show episode or
it
whatever, don't. Yeah.
All right, so next up on deck is Mr. Clay Groves with Fish Nerds podcast.
We had him here in the show, in the studio.
He didn't come in
Well,
studio.
not studio, but he was on through Skype.
Yeah, he hosted an episode of Twisted
It was
10 as well.
I was a little concerned because he does a fishing show, right? So when I heard that Clay Groves was coming on, I was a little hesitant because I was like, dude, I don't know shit about fishing. Like, I know not. Like, I'm just gonna be sitting there bored. I'm not gonna know what to talk about. But I was really shocked, man. His show was fucking entertaining. I learned shit. Like his
Absolutely.
topic was awesome. Like I loved it. Like
Yeah.
I could definitely relate. It kept anybody. So I don't care if you have no interest in fishing, like me, none. It was still, you listen to it. It's still entertaining. It's funny. He keeps it going for sure.
Okay, so Clay Groves' episode of Twisted 10 is episode number 63.
Yeah.
And Clay Groves' episode was episode number 63, and he brings the top 10 fishy parents. And it gets interesting. It has to do with parenting and in the fishing
How
world.
fish are parents. Like they're,
It's
how they do it.
Yeah, how they do it. And it's entertaining as hell. And his
It is.
podcast is very entertaining.
I thought he was going to give us like top 10 fishing lures,
right?
to catch bass.
If you've ever listened to his show, though,
but he
you-
doesn't
you
talk
hear-
like that. It's not like that.
No, his comedy
He's
comes through
educated
very well.
and yeah.
Yeah. Without further ado, check out Clay Groves' response clip. And this is a long one because he's got 2 PhDs that come on this clip. So check this out. He went and got the big dogs in the industry to help him out. So here is Clay Groves.
Wow. Hey, Twisted 10. Thanks for inviting the fish nerds to come on here and talk about the flat earth conspiracy. And just to lead up front, I am not neither the fish nerds, by the way, are not flat earthers. We are earth ballers. We love to ball on the earth, and we're okay with that. But we're wading into uncharted waters of the flat earth debate. As we know, it's not a debate at all. All earth ballers are not going to switch sides. And the flat earthers won't change or look at their evidence that contradicts their model either. So we don't agree on the source information, and that's cool. I'm actually a huge fan of the Flat Earth podcast. I listen every single week. So far, I've not heard any evidence at all that's compelling, but the show itself and the people on it I enjoy. I think they're very compelling, and I really, really like them. But at first, I thought these guys were serious about the Flat Earth. I thought they believed in their model and in their science that they were sharing. And now I see they're probably more just looking to be contrarians. And that's fine. They're like punk rock science people, maybe. I don't know. But here's what I heard last week of the show. Dave, one of the hosts, this is a paraphrase, he said that he didn't understand how his plants grow. He said, I planted a sunflower seed, it grew up, it got really big, but the amount of volume of dirt under that sunflower didn't change. Therefore, plants must be full of photons. This is amazing to me. Amazing discovery, Dave. You should share that with the world scientifically, or you should Google photosynthesis and see how plants grow. That photon explanation, the idea that there would be different volume under a plant, is like thousands of years old, much like the flat Earth theory. I think the whole thing is steeped in religion, but they don't say that on the show. But if you read aloud, it kind of feels like religion to me. But it's interesting and it's fun, and I like that they're talking about it. But This has nothing to do with fish right now, but we could get there eventually. So here's what we know. Flat Earthers, work on a few things to help me understand your stuff. 1, describe the model of the Earth. What does it look like? Because on your show, I keep hearing a lot of I believe stuff. I believe there's a big wall around the Earth. I believe the Earth is a disk. I believe the Earth is an infinite plane. I believe the Earth goes straight down. Fly an airplane over it and take a look. I think it do something to show us what's past that ice wall in Antarctica or whatever it is you guys think. So describe one model that flat earthers agree on. If they don't, then you're just pretending. Keep in mind, YouTube is not a research site, and simple uncontrolled experiments created to prove stuff are not the stuff of science. Science likes disproving stuff. So if you guys have any real evidence of a flat earth, you got to share it with someone in the science world. 3, describe the motivation for the globe earthers to keep the shape of the earth a secret. Why on earth? If we know the truth, those of us, I've worked as a science teacher, and a lot of people on my show are scientists, so they must be part of this global conspiracy. They must be getting paid to keep this secret. What's the motivation? Why would they do it? Now on YouTube, a lot of people have said, and I've watched the YouTube videos, a lot of people have said it's NASA. NASA gets funded at, some millions and millions of dollars a day, so it doesn't make sense for NASA to want to tell us the truth about the Earth. But that also would rely on people like Pythagoras predicting NASA's existence, because we've known the Earth is round for a long, long time. And you guys have to prove it false. You have to disprove the globe Earth. So good luck on that and share information. I can't wait to hear what you guys come up with. And luckily for us, the fish nerds have real scientists working with us. And I've got Doc Martin, who's got her PhD, and Professor B, also a PhD in physics, discussing the science of the flat Earth, or what they perceive as a science of the flat Earth. And then we have our fish nerds librarian, Jeff Danielson, chiming in with his opinion as a well-read librarian. All these people are smarter than me. I love the Flat Earth podcast. I'm glad you guys keep making it. I love the Twisted 10 podcast. And this is Clay from the Fish Nerds. Enjoy all this silliness.
Hello, everyone that's out there and listening. This is Doc Martin from the Fish Nerds podcast. A lot of you already know who I am, but it's my understanding we are doing a collaboration with the Twisted 10 podcast, and we're going to talk about flat Earth. So I thought I would introduce myself to everybody out there that doesn't know me. I got my PhD in biology, specifically aquatic ecology, and my dissertation focused on distribution, habitat use, and ecosystem level impacts of small-bodied cyprinids in prairie streams, which is a mouthful, but for all you fish lovers out there, I work with bait fish, and they're super awesome. I am also currently a faculty member at a university in the Midwest, and I'm enrolled as a master's student in physics out here. And since we're going to be discussing the flat Earth idea, I thought it would be great to bring in my physics advisor, and I guess we're going to call him Dr. B. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi out there. I think most of you do not know me. So my name is Jorge Ballester, and I go by Dr. B. And I've been teaching here since 1990, having obtained a PhD in physics. And I'm really, nowadays, I'm all kinds of general theoretical physics and even a little bit of experimental physics when that needs to be done. Like working with students and hoping to explain what science is all about. So I haven't really scripted what I'm going to say about the flat Earth very much, so we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, so the reason I ended up inviting Dr. B along with just myself is because when I had originally agreed to do this, I thought I would just pick one kind of fundamental idea that the flat earthers had and then debunk it. I spent a lot of time online going through their website, which if you've actually looked at it, both Dr. B and everyone else out there, it's a really nice website. It's got a little frequently asked questions. It explains their outlook. It's very legitimate. These people obviously took a lot of time and consideration into answering questions, which I appreciate. But I also found that I'm not going to be the first one to do this. There's been lots of people over lots of decades. And And so instead of debunking one particular thing, after spending some time chatting with Dr. B all day today, we thought we would just talk about what science is and why, in general, the realm of proper science rejects the flat Earth idea.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Initially, Doc Martin came over to talk to me about specifically about the universal acceleration idea that is supposed to be a flat Earth replacement for gravity.
Yes.
And right away there's a problem that, in about a year you get going, and she showed me, calculated in a year or so you're going at the speed of light. So if you're accelerating at 9.8 meters per second squared, being the standard free fall acceleration on the surface of the Earth. So that runs into a problem. According to Einstein, the speed of light is the maximum possible speed. However, it turns out, on looking a little closer, that the flat Earth folks have looked into this, and they have some explanation. And through some clever math and just appealing to some unusual features of special relativity, they say it's possible to be accelerating forever, and however, you only keep getting closer and closer to the speed of light, but you think you're accelerating at a constant rate.
Yeah. So that led us to the question of, first of all, what frame of reference would we be in? So, for example, if we shot Dr. B in a rocket that's at a constant acceleration, I would be here on Earth, right? And I would watch him. And if I'm in my frame of reference, then from what I understand, I would see him tangentially approach the speed of light without ever actually getting there.
Yes.
But what he would experience,
I would feel like I'm being accelerated. I would feel the same as when you accelerate in an elevator. You feel a bit of extra weight, and it's just the elevator pushing you up. So this kind of flat Earth idea is just, it's called Einstein's elevator, and it sounds like it's a little bit of a play on that. It turned out to be harder to debunk just the specific math with that item, because it's just kind of cherry picked out of all the weird things that you can find in special relativity. So it was there's other things wrong with it that aren't just directly trying to debunk the specific math.
right. So if you cherry pick data, which I guess the flat earthers tend to say that science isn't real, but then they are also using science to support some of their what they want to be a scientific theory, I think, right? So
yeah, it sounds like it. I looked at some of the material on the website, and certainly the appeal to relativity, the appeal to Einstein's elevator thought experiment, that all sounds kind of like science. But then the parts that they don't like so much, then those are fake.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Earth doesn't have gravity, but the moon does, apparently.
Apparently the moon has gravity, but the Earth doesn't have gravity because
the Earth is flat.
Yeah, the Earth is flat. So if the Earth had gravity, unfortunately, the gravity would naturally pull the Earth together into a kind of a sphere. So if you want to think about the flat Earth, you don't want gravity pulling the Earth into a sphere.
Mm-hmm. So you can't have it.
Can't have it.
But then I was wondering along those same lines, if the moon has gravity and the Earth doesn't have gravity, that would mean that the Earth, and I think on their website they say this, that the stars are fixed at 3,000 something miles above.
Yeah.
So does that also mean that all of our observations about distant galaxies and blue shifts and red shifts, all of that is junk then, I guess?
It's all junk.
It would have to be? Excuse me.
Well, it has all the marks of pseudoscience in that they'll explain stuff, and it's just, it seems like the conclusion is already in mind. And so then you just kind of keep
Almost dogmatic.
Yeah, dogmatically keep that view, and then if you once you get in that mindset, then you just kind of explain everything away. So there may be some bits and pieces of science that they can appeal to. Often that there is some little bits and pieces of science. The problem is they really cherry pick. In general, people that have some kind of pseudoscience ideas will cherry pick which parts of science they seem to like. They'll say, well, this is definitely true, but that other stuff is...
I don't like that
I don't like that
No,
stuff.
thank you.
No. Yeah, so those, blue shifts and red shifts. And the thing is, all these things are part of science. If somebody has a revolutionary idea, it's really on them to explain all that stuff.
Right. The burden of proof, as they say.
The burden of proof, yeah. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
And I think the fact that the flat earth, like they have, I'm going to use the word evidence because that's what they use, but I'm not sure if I agree with their evidence. Because what their evidence is it's ignoring a lot of very fundamental things that science knows to be very true. And I just don't understand the justification of saying yes to one thing and no to another. And the whole concept of science is wrong, except when it agrees with me. Then we'll keep it. That's very, very incongruent, I feel like.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I wonder, just looking at the materials, just trying to debunk specifically that universal gravitation, the universal acceleration explanation for why we feel our weight against the ground. I found it real hard to make sense of it, and that's the problem. I'm trying to make sense of it.
Right.
Which
a sense of a nonsensical thing.
A sense out of something that's kind of nonsensical. So I started to wonder, well, if you're a flat Earth believing person, are you supposed to believe in forces in general? Because you can have, if the Earth is flat, you can have forces pushing across the surface of the Earth. And if you don't believe in gravity, there's a device called the Cavendish Balance that demonstrates gravitational attraction between things like bowling balls or, really dense spheres like made out of lead. If you put them close together, the force of attraction is not very much. It's very, very weak, but the description that you get is exactly in line with what we would get if you scale that up to the size of the Earth, or the sun pulling on the Earth, the sun pulling on all the planets. The constant there's the gravitational constant that's in there. I mean, I've had students do it, and they got a number that's close to that. It's very hard to do because the force is not very big.
So, yeah, and I guess we have more questions than answers for the flat earthers because I feel like personally, when I read through their website, there's a lot of thoughtful content there because it looks like they're thinking about forces and acceleration and, calculating what the size of the sun and the path of the sun has to be in order for the Earth to be flat. However, I think, and this is the crux of it for me, is the purpose of science. One of them is that once you come up with some kind of theory or law, you can use it to predict future events. And I think that is a really big one where the flat earth just fails. Flat earthers take evidence and all new evidence, and then they just manipulate it to explain all the things that happened in the past, but they don't have anything that can predict something in the future.
Yeah, that's important. We think back on Copernicus and making the sun-centered solar system. They had historically that observations of Mars showed that Mars would kind of drift against the background stars. It would drift in one direction, then drift in the other direction, then drift the other way. So the so-called retrograde motion of Mars was hard to understand if Mars is going around the Earth. But once you put the sun at the center and put the Earth going around, and the orbit isn't quite a circle, but it might as well be, for this discussion, it could be a circle. The Earth is going around the sun, and Mars is going around the sun also, but further away than the Earth is. then the explanation of why Mars's motion looks the way it does is very simple. It's very complicated according to an Earth-centered model, and it's very simple with a Sun-centered model. So that's part of the thing, is that at some point the flat Earth, if you take it to the extreme, you can probably do some complicated non-Euclidean geometry that you can probably fit almost anything into that model.
But then if you can fit anything into a model, the model's no good. I mean, it's not leading to anything in the future, and it's a very complicated model. Right.
So if we then resort to Occam's razor, what are we gaining for all this complexity? Why not just go with a much simpler thing? So not only is there a burden to show that a flat Earth model could reproduce everything that's observed, including the things that people don't like, and that it can predict something new, and that it does it better than a spherical Earth model, that it's simpler in some way. So it's not a question of is it true or not. Is at that point, is it simpler?
Is it useful?
Is it useful for anything?
I mean, what is the flat Earth useful for?
Yeah.
I don't know. For fun, I guess. I mean, something to chat about over a couple of beers.
Yeah, I mean, if you're willing to distort and contort space and time enough, you can contort it, maybe to fit just about anything. But the contortions are so complicated. Reminds me of Ptolemy's cycles and epicycles. Mars was going around the Earth, but it was kind of going around on a circle that was on top of another circle, and that's how you reproduce this funny motion of Mars. And it sort of works, but it's more complicated.
And it's not useful.
There's no, it was only once that the sun was put at the center and the Earth is sort of going around the sun, and all the planets are going around the sun, that Newton was able to kind of put together the law of universal gravitation, which of course the Flat Earth Society doesn't believe in, but that's...
Well, the Earth doesn't have gravity, but other things do, I guess.
Yeah.
Which...
Oh, right.
Because I think... Well, it depends, because I've read a few different things, that the sun and the moon are spheres, but then I've also read that they're just like hologram projections. So I think that kind of depends on your flavor of flat Earth belief, which is a whole other issue of why are there so many different tiny theories, theories in the colloquial sense, maybe not in the scientific sense for sure, with the flat Earth, when I feel like scientists overwhelmingly agree for everything else. And you can make the argument that just because science overwhelmingly agrees doesn't mean you should believe it. That's fine. That's great. If you go, you can watch the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia clip that science is a liar. And you know what? You're not wrong, but you're not being useful. So keep that in your pocket.
That's funny. Well, another funny one, I just thought of another funny thing, because so it's supposed to be that space flight is a conspiracy of some kind.
I think all of NASA and the government is all conspiracies, and all photos from space have been faked.
Okay, so here's a question. Other than, as somebody said, hey, I know some of those people. Those people couldn't keep a secret that well.
Right.
But apart from the human factor, I'd like to know, okay, so I can grab a baseball and I can throw it a couple of feet up in the air and it comes right back down. And I can throw it just like in a baseball game. You can kind of throw it down the field and it follows a little arc and it comes back down. And you can launch model rockets. And so I just want to know, at what point does the real thing stop and the fakery begin? Because there's a pretty smooth connection between throwing a baseball up and down and launching a rocket into orbit. So, but there's got to be a hard break between real stuff and fake conspiracy theory stuff.
Yeah. So is the fakery that we don't actually have enough power generated to lift off a rocket? Or maybe the rocket itself can't be properly built?
You know, that's a good question because, you know, we hear all the news from North Korea that they launched, you know, ballistic missiles and just they're just really launching something until it comes back down to Earth. So I guess I wonder, according to the flat Earth theory, what's the farthest you can launch a rocket that's actually a real launch, and when is it fake? Because I don't know that there's really much, you know, a very high altitude rocket is not very much different from one when something goes into orbit. Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, now I guess well, I don't want to explain it for them because, you know, I could start... I'm willing to start trying to explain it.
Turns out this is rocket science.
This is rocket science, exactly. Yeah. So gosh, what else? Yeah, what else have we learned?
Well, I'm not sure if I've learned anything. I've had a lot of fun re-looking into some relativity theories because that's always a little brain teaser, I think. But yeah,
I'm wearing an interesting button which I'm trying to propagate. The button says, "We have enough youth. How about a fountain of smart?"
I like it. I think we'll end there.
Great.
All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed listening to our little fireside chat here in my office, and I'm super glad to have Dr. B here with me today. I guess if you need to get a hold of myself, you can always do that through the Fish Nerds Podcast Facebook page, or you can always call the Fish Nerds directly.
Thank you for inviting me, Doc Martin.
Right.
It's been great fun. I hope it goes over well.
Well, I'm sure it won't. All right.
Hey, it's Jeff the effing librarian here, trying to chip in on the flat earth controversy that's not a controversy because it's complete BS, crap, garbage, nonsense, war garble. And the bottom line is, you can't disprove this scientifically because that has, you can quote all the science in the world that you want to these people and they will never get it because they're thinking about a metaphysical model of the world, not a scientific one. And it all is based around what they perceive to be common sense that, well, if the earth is moving, why don't we feel it? The sun appears to move in the sky and the sun appears to move in the sky. And so that must be the truth, that the sun and the moon are moving. And then, the rest of it builds from that nonsense. But really, why they believe this is because it makes them feel special. They feel like they're the chosen ones, that they see through, the Matrix. They took the red pill. They're Neo. And that makes them feel good. It makes them feel important. It makes them feel different than the rest of the crowd. And so I think the only way you can defeat this in a person would be to try to chip away at this sense of why are you special? Why are you the chosen one? How come you have this perfect knowledge? What are you getting from this? What does it do for you? I think that line of reasoning might go somewhere, but facts and logic and rationality, not going to work because humans value feelings over facts. That's just the way the human mind works most of the time and most people. And, you have to learn to be rational and you have to learn how to use logic and you have to learn how to use the scientific method. And the default setting for the human brain is feeling. And, so these people aren't crazy. They're not stupid. They just value the feeling that they get from this believing this system. And so if you could chip away at that specialness, that feeling that they are the elect, the chosen, you might get somewhere. Other than that, forget about it. Beat your head against the wall all day long. It isn't going to work. So this is Jeff, the effing librarian, signing off. And I'll see you in Agartha, the twilight land under the black sun where we all live forever. See ya.
And there we go. Kind of hard to argue.
Yeah, spot on, dude.
Yeah, pretty,
they nailed it.
Pretty logical. pretty direct. Yeah. So those folks add commentary occasionally to Clay's show, to the Fish Nerd show. So they're regulars on his show, or at least one of the two PhDs is regular on his show and provides some of the factual information that's needed from time to time. But yeah, thanks guys. That was, that was awesome. And very, very good perspectives.
Indeed.
So that leads us to our boys.
The boys.
From Hysteria 51.
Fuck yeah, dude. I fucking love this show, man. Because you know how you listen to podcasts and then you kind of fall away from one for a while and then you'd be like, oh shit. And then you're like, I get all these catch up episodes you do, you know?
Yeah.
And then after you do 2 or 3 of those and you're like, oh fuck, I forgot about this show.
Exactly. Yes.
Anyway,
I do that all the time.
Yeah. I used to do that for a long time, forever. That's how I did things. But lately, over the past year, all the other shows flew by the wayside. All I listen to now is like Hysteria 51 super regularly and 1 or 2 others. And that's it.
I might have like 1 or 2 episodes in the last 2 months that I've missed of theirs, but for the most part, I've got them all.
I've heard every single episode of theirs. Yeah.
So for our listeners that are interested in branching out and finding new shows, and I know this isn't the smartest tactic to use is to always promote other shows, but guess what? We're not necessarily in this industry to just glamorize ourselves. We find very interesting people that happen to have other podcasts, and we're going to promote them. And all the people you hear on this show, Dan Cummins, Clay Groves, and the guys at Hysteria 51, all have fantastic shows. Each one of them in their own niche are fucking gods. I mean, Dan by himself has made it all the way up to some of the top numbers inside iTunes, which is remarkable to do. And he's a great storyteller, so that helps. The guys over at Hysteria 51 are the same way. They've got an entertaining show, a very, very well-produced show.
Yes, yeah.
And it's on some of the craziest shit you have ever heard. So conspiracy theories all over the place.
Conspiracy theories. You want to talk about aliens. You want to talk about serial killers. They cover all that shit. And it's so entertaining. And Conspiracy Bot, their little robot like sidekick, he's hilarious.
And the guys over at Hysteria 51 also hosted their own Twisted 10. That is episode number 50. 50. So go back and check it out. That's the top 10 government conspiracies with a twist.
Oh, yeah. They did have a twist.
They did have a twist. They did a good job with it.
Indeed. And my guess on the twist, I feel so stupid for even guessing that. By the way, I just wanted that's my redemption. That's it. Because after I said it, I was like, I think it's this, and then I was like, oh, why did I say that? I'm a moron. I just look like a moron. I look like a moron in front of Brent and John and Conspiracy Bot.
They're doing really well with their show, Tack.
Their show, they're humble dudes.
Jealous.
They act like, oh, we only have like 2 listeners. I think they're way better than that. I think,
considerably. They've got a great show and they know it.
They've got a huge following. They're
good job.
Those kids are going places.
They're going places. See. So anyway, here is their response to the Flat Earth episode that we hosted, and they're a little bit biased because they provided us with the contacts for David and Jaron. However, they don't hold back in this. So here you go. Take a listen to the guys from Hysteria 51 podcast.
Hey, Adam, Tack, and gang. It's the guys from Hysteria 51 broadcasting from the lower 4th dimension, otherwise known as Chicago. It is me, John Goforth, my friend and colleague, co-captain Brent Hand.
What's up, everybody?
And, of course, the third wheel of our show, the one and only Conspiracy Bot.
Hola, douchebags.
We wanted to chime in real quickly and give you our thoughts on the Flat Earth. As you know, we had David and Jaron on as well to talk through their thoughts on the Flat Earth. Brent?
Yeah, Tack and Adam were gracious enough to sit in that fucking debacle that was listening to them make their case, their argument, whatever you want to call it, for the Flat Earth. Open our eyes, our blind eyes, as David said he was going to do for us. So I'm not quite sure it worked out that way, John.
Yeah, I don't feel any more woke than I already was.
That's just because you're sheeple, John.
You're
part of the problem.
Well, I've been told that my whole life, but that might not have anything to do with Flat Earth. Yeah, here's my biggest problem with the Flat Earth debate. I'm not even going to get into the stupidness of being able to prove the horizon and gravity. And I mean, it's all ridiculous because there's a lot smarter people than me out there that will prove that with science.
That's conjecture, John. Come on now.
The moment you say that, the moment you prove it, they go, well, I don't believe science.
Yeah.
Or that's just them pulling the wool over your eyes.
I don't believe in gravity unless it, works for my case that I'm arguing on right now.
So let's flip the switch. All right. Prove to me that there's the possibility that type of overwhelmingly huge conspiracy could possibly exist. We're going back years and years and years and years. People in thousands of people in positions of authority
for hundreds of years
had the wherewithal to make this happen, had the power to make it happen, the money, and weren't bungling idiots like oftentimes our government is. And for no one to figure it out, it makes no sense to me. And also had the basic like CGI. It was called everything CGI.
Holograms and electric lights.
I'm not sure computer graphics were that advanced back then.
John, I got the answer for you, and it's very simple. It comes down and it boils down to 2 words: the reptilians.
Reptile wins.
They have been in control for hundreds of years, and David and Jaren are just smart enough to know that there are reptilian overlords, and they're the ones who are pulling the wool over our eyes. I'm sorry, the firmament over our eyes.
Brent, we all know that the moon is hollow, and they live inside the moon, and if that's the case...
No, that's just a hologram. You're mistaken, my friend.
No, that is both of your heads.
Then where do the reptilians live?
In the hollow earth that they're not sure. We've only drilled down 7 or 8 miles, John.
Who knows?
He kept using that term that we've.
That's true.
So who knows what's really down there?
But see,
I'll tell you what's not gravity.
There might be a turtle though, which
That's
is
true.
also a reptile.
Uh-oh.
In all seriousness, does it make any sense, forgetting the science part, does it make any sense that any kind of world order could pull off that kind of... For instance, there's an end of the world. No one's gotten there, ever?
Spoiler alert, John, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And we're fucking conspiracy theorists to a point. Like, we look at all these, and our whole show on Hysteria 51 is us talking about conspiracies with, I like to think, a level head and an open mind to a lot of this stuff. And the problem was, when we had Adam and Tack on, and when we had Jaren and David on, we also had Greg Finn, who is an astrophysicist. He's taught physics in college. He's done lectures on astronomy. And every question that they had, he had an answer for, a scientifically provable answer. And they just said, I don't believe that. You cannot use that in any other fucking line of fucking anything and have people take you seriously, except for something like that. The Earth's flat. Well, it feels flat to me, and we have this proof. I don't believe it.
Yeah, it's one of the only arguments I've ever heard where people say you just use your senses. You have to rely on your senses and your senses alone. Well, what about like instruments that we built? Nope, just senses. And on the show, I actually brought up, okay, so if I stick my hands in really, really hot water and then immediately douse them in really cold water, like a bucket of cold water, my hands will tell me, my senses will tell me that it's really, really hot water, that they're on fire.
But your pants will also tell you that it's warm down there too, because you probably just pissed yourself.
Also true. Didn't we do that to a roommate in college?
I think so.
Point being that, yeah, you can't always rely on your senses. That's why God gave us brains, and that's why we build instruments to help us progress through humanity.
I think it boils down to, there's a difference between Jaren and David. Jaren to me sounds like someone who actually believes this. I believe David is a shill. I believe he is a 100% a troll, and he's doing this for the money, for any way that he can get notoriety or anything off of this. He's doing that because of whatever fucking reason he sees in his mind. The first thing they did when we did this episode was want to know how they could take it for themselves and monetize it. And that was the biggest thing that I was kind of put off by, is that was their overreaching thing. They didn't even care about their message as much as how they could use it to benefit themselves. And I just looked at that and I listened to them, and I think, I don't really believe anyone can be that ignorant, and that's the word I really want to use, is ignorant, to just turn a blind eye to everything, not just because you're indoctrinated, as they say, by science, but because you can use mathematics and you can learn these things that people were doing hundreds and hundreds of years ago and figuring these things out. I think that it's just a money grab, and it is preying on the weaker-minded people for an audience.
I do know that I lost all respect. Offline, we had a conversation with David, and he informed us that he also thought that not only, I think he might mention this on the show, that the Boston bombing was fake because there was a banner that didn't have holes in it, but he also mentioned Sandy Hook and numerous other tragedies in our country's history.
There's another podcast called Project Archivist, and one of the hosts on there, Lobo, was having a conversation with David on our page, and David told him that the Boston bombing was fake and Lobo had family there. And he was like, no, they're liars.
Yeah, I that's where I lost all respect. Not that I had respect. I didn't have respect for their opinions from day one, but for as people, I shouldn't say they. I'm not going to loop Jaron into that. Jaron didn't say that.
Though he does believe.
Oh, does he?
No, he absolutely is,
well,
he believes
David said that to me, and I lost respect for him as a person at that point.
Right.
I did not have respect for his opinion, but I did have respect for him as a person. He was willing to come on the show, and we appreciated him being a good sport. And hey, thank you. You donated a couple hours of your time to us. That was cool. But then the moment that you said that, and you're talking about, the thing about the flat Earth that it didn't bother me giving them time because it's not hurting anybody. Ultimately, if you want to stick your head in the sand and be a fucking moron, then go, God bless. But you start talking about situations where real people lost their lives and you're calling them fake and actors, that's where I draw the line, and I'm done with you.
Even I think they're assholes, and I'm a huge asshole myself.
That is true.
It's pretty bad when he doesn't like you.
Yeah, the problem I had, and I told this to John right afterwards, is I felt bad for giving them a soapbox because I think there are a lot of conspiracies out there. JFK, Tuskegee, stuff like that need to be looked into, that when you give people like this a soapbox, it detracts from real tragedies and things that need scrutiny. And these people are poison.
Alternative facts.
So,
speaking of poison.
So guys, that's been our thoughts on this. We're going to hand it back to you. Thanks for letting us let you know, I guess, how much we detested the experience with them, I guess would be the best part. Though, Tack and Adam, you guys did okay.
Love you. Love the show. Hugs and kisses. Hearts and X's. Hysteria 51.
All right, now that's over, let's get drunk.
And so that was Brent and John and Seabot, of course.
That was awesome.
Seabot's got to make his appearance in there.
And little teaser, we're going to be on Hysteria 51 coming up again.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Not till January, but we'll get there.
I can't wait. I think it's going to be a
towards
blast.
the end of January or something. But
yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. Those guys are fucking awesome. And to all of our folks who have submitted responses for that episode that they know we're going out in this bonus episode, thank you very much. Mr. Dan Cummins with Timesuck Podcast, Mr. Clay Groves and his accompaniment with Fish Nerds Podcast, and our boys John and Brent and Seabot from Hysteria 51 Podcast. And that's the plug bell you hear in the background.
Indeed.
So I've got something prepared, Tack, but let's have a little conversation first.
Okay.
So how do you feel about, well, first let's tell our listeners this. So for the listeners of the Twisted 10, we published the episode 66, the Flat Earth Challenge to Science, basically, was David and Jaron's episode. We published it everywhere we could. So it obviously went out on iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and all of the podcast apps to listen to podcasts. Mm-hmm. But we also published it on YouTube, our YouTube channel. It might have 1,000 or so views on there, but we allowed David and Jaron to share it or mirror it on their YouTube channel. And that thing's got 21,000 views.
Yeah.
That's tremendous for a podcast. For a single podcast episode to get that many listens is remarkable. And the comments on there there are far more comments on their episode than there are on ours on YouTube. And they're mixed.
We have a nice little thread on ours. If you want to go check it out, jump over to the YouTube and check out our Dichotomy Media podcast.
I do want to say thank you to David and Jaron for not editing it. They edited they published it in its entirety. Yeah, but I mean, it is their channel. They can do what they want. However, it is in its entirety, and they played our ads that were in our episodes as typical. So, hey, David and Jared, thank you. That was very nice.
I don't think they had to play the ads though. They could have cut those out, right?
My only caveat was that they had to.
It's ownership to Dichotomy Media, so I mean, they can't be altering.
No, they can't alter
product,
it. But our sponsors pay us to produce a product, and they're sponsoring our shows. And if somebody's going to take one of our episodes and mirror it somewhere for the entertainment value of the show itself, I think our sponsors need to be represented. So they got represented. So they did well. Thank you, David and Jaron, for republishing. So, what do you think, Tack? What's your
well? Somebody said to me when I was first getting into this whole flat Earth theory, which was probably almost 2 years ago, is when I really started getting into it and looking into it. Obviously, I'm a spherical dude. So,
well, are you talking about your appearance? I'm kidding.
Oh, that's a fat joke. is at first I was like, this is fascinating. You know, like people believe this stuff and they have, quote, science to back it up. And I'm like, this just blows my mind. And then somebody once said, don't remember who, these guys are lying. Like they're just saying it to get attention, to get money. They don't actually believe it. Look, all these flat earth theorists, not all of them, a lot of them are making money off this. And I was like,
trying to understand the angle of that.
I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you're crazy, right? There's no way. I think these guys generally believe this stuff. And this one guy was like, no, dude, trust me. There's no way. And it's like, this is strictly an angle to make money. And so I didn't believe it. And then I started watching this more and more, and I think he may be right. Maybe onto something. Because, I mean, there's some dudes that are making a lot of money off of this. I'm not saying they all think that. I think some of your heavy hitters out there that are really pushing for this flat earth theory stuff, that are making money off of it, don't believe a damn word of it. But they have all these, it's like a cult almost. They have all these followers and stuff that are, I don't want to use a brainwash, but
to make money off of
I think they believe it. They believe this when, you know, he's our leader and he believes this, so we believe this.
I see what you're saying.
And then but he's really like, I don't believe any of this crap, you know.
To actually make money off of YouTube, which is where most of these flat earth folks reside, that's the majority of them, or publish into YouTube. You'd have to have millions and millions of views. And none of these episodes or none of these videos that they publish have millions. Lots of them have thousands and some hundreds of thousands.
Oh, yeah,
but when it comes to making money on YouTube, that's pennies. That's nothing. Where some of the big videos that are out there that have millions and millions of views, that's where the folks make money, and their channels are syndicated, or not syndicated, but they're sponsored. And, you know, YouTube pays the owner of the channel for publishing videos. That's not the case for the majority of all of the Flat Earth videos, to include David and Jaren's. Jaren, by the way, we'll plug this. Jaren has a channel called Jarenism, and it's great. I subscribe to it, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but it's entertaining. However, I don't support it at all. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't believe it.
I watched a lot of David as well. He's got, what, DITHR?
Dearth. Yeah, DITRH. Yeah.
It stands for, I forget.
Deep inside the rabbit hole. Deep inside the rabbit hole.
Yeah, if you ever like in a Timesuck on YouTube and just want to watch all this flat earth stuff, you will eventually come across a David video.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, Dave, you know, and I'll summarize David, my opinions on David and Jaren in just a few minutes, but it's, man, you got to be a certain mindset to go down to this route. I mean, you really, really do. It's an interesting study on human psychology. It really
But
is.
I think it's a lot of stubbornness and bullheadedness too. Like they would say, I don't believe any of this stuff. Show me proof. Well, anybody who's ever lived on the Space Coast sees proof here all the freaking time. But yet they don't want to make that trip to come here.
Yeah, they said in one of your, because you commented on that. It's like, come on down and watch SpaceX launch and land one of their rockets.
Yeah.
And their response was, well, you know, David Copperfield could make the Statue of Liberty disappear. Well, here's the literal response to that. When you're watching a SpaceX or NASA or, you know, the Air Force or whatever, any of these rockets take off and then some of them even come back and land, you've got vantages and views of that from 100 different angles. From the out of the north, out of the south, you know, right there at the VAB, close to it. You know, 3 miles is the ideal range you want to be out here. So in case there's an anomaly or an explosion, the projectiles from the device should fall shorter than the spectator's distance. So that's kind of the idea
out of
behind
the
it.
debris field is what's called.
But to pull off a magic trick, all right, if they're going to analogize the launching and landing of a SpaceX rocket to a David Copperfield magic trick, you have to cover all perspectives and angles. And in this situation, you can't.
Miles.
Yeah, for hundreds of miles. Because Georgia on a clear day could see a rocket take off and not necessarily land, but they could see the trail. So yeah, it's to the common sense person, even the incredibly well-educated person, that's not. Look, that's not an illusion. That's not a magic trick. That's a no shit actual physical thing happening.
What I loved about that little debate that we did on that episode, sorry, is I said I invited them to come down, and then he said it's a magic trick, and then you asked a great question because you said, even if you were here and you saw it with your own eyes, would you believe it then? And he said no.
Yeah.
And then we were pretty much then why are we talking?
Yeah,
You know?
it's hard to debate somebody when they are immune. So often from the flat Earth perspective, they counter actual science. So when I say actual science, I mean things that are taken at large to be scientifically true. They take those things and they tear them apart to the point where they think they have proven credibly that the facts that we have in the science community are not facts. However, in the same light, they will argue with certain formulas and certain equations that are derived out of science and mathematics. So here's the catch to that. If you're going to have the argument of, I don't believe that science because that person could have been influenced to alter their data, and then all the people that do the peer reviews on that same data are also influenced to lie about that. However, you are going to accept other pieces of the science and mathematical communities, you're a hypocrite. I mean, that's the bottom line. You're hypocritically arguing points, and it's frustrating for the rest of the world who understands how the science and mathematical communities work. You can't argue that. It's a bogus argument. And you guys know that, but that's okay. That's your stance. Entertainment or literal value, whatever you want to do with it, that's your stance.
Indeed, for show.
All right, so Tack, I'm going to go into a little piece that I prepared for this. All right?
Okay.
Hello, Twisted 10 listeners. You've heard from some of our fellow podcasters in response to the mega popular Flat Earth Believers hosted episode of The Twisted 10. David and Jaron were our guests on that episode, and I'd like to point out that they were cordial, polite, and entertaining. They really are incredibly interesting people to me. It's almost like a riddle the way I see it, though. The riddle to me is not whether the Earth is round or flat, as I've made it very clear how I feel. I feel the Earth is round, just so everybody out there knows. But why are they so convinced in the opposite of the rest of the scientific community? The Flat Earth conspiracy is so grandiose that it stands out from all the other conspiracy theories out there. Now, I'm in support of challenging conventional thought, and David and Jaron do a great job on this. Keep in mind, some conspiracies have actually got some credibility and truth behind them. Just Google MKUltra or CIA funding the Dalai Lama or the Tuskegee Airmen. All of those turned out to have lots of traces of truth to them. David and Jaron's episode challenges the scientific community to prove 10 unassociated scientific items. I am no scientist, nor are the rest of the cast members of the Twisted 10, so having us respond in kind to those challenges is quite impossible. I have had a few people contact me saying they want to host an episode of the Twisted 10 to specifically challenge one of what David and Jaron called out our listeners for. One of them, as an example, is evolution. So, why do they support this conspiracy and vocalize about it so much? David has recently began a podcast, and Jaron has a YouTube channel, and his YouTube channel, by the way, has 85,000 subscribers. Yes, 85,000. I believe to answer the question of why do they support conspiracy theories like this, is either one of two things. Either they truly believe the world is flat and government scientists and inclusive citizens of the world are in cahoots to cover this up, or they're taking advantage of a sensationalized topic for personal gain of some kind. The Flat Earth topic has a huge following, and David and Jaron have harnessed some of that audience through their YouTube channel and through podcasting. They are the perfect Abbott and Costello to debate and defend their stance. David is the aggressor and sharp-minded to be able to quickly refute topics in a debate, while Jaron is seemingly the more educated, calm, cool, and collected side of their team. So is it for money? Is it for fame? Is it for glory? After speaking with David offline a lot about his personal thoughts and beliefs, I really don't think money is their motivating factor. I also don't think their motivation is driven by a popularity contest of any kind. While 85,000 subscribers is great, you won't be hosting any TED Talks off that level of audience. Hell, I even subscribe to Jaron's YouTube channel out of entertainment value alone. He does a good job. It's produced very well. It is honestly my belief that David and Jaron truly believe. Their approach for supporting their beliefs is where I have a concern about their stances. As opposed to providing evidential support for their perspective, they make attempts to counter or discredit the current evidence we have on hand. When challenged with something like how can the Coriolis effect be explained on a flat Earth, they default to a faith-based answer response. Their answer, the Coriolis effect, is caused by, quote, a force from the heavens. When originally tossing around the idea of having these guys on our podcast, I reached out to some of my peers in the community and the responses were mixed. Some loved the idea and understood the satire of what we envisioned by having them on. Others outright hated the idea. One in particular has studied behavioral sciences at a very well-known university here in Florida. I have always considered her an intellectual type, and she has adamantly opposed them coming on our show, and it shocked me. Her rationale was spot on, though. She alluded to how people absorb information and how our show, even though its intention was satirical comedy, may actually cause people to further doubt the evidence we hold in a scientific community as fact. This is really dangerous path, she pointed out. While I respect her way more than she probably knows, we decided to progress forward with the episode anyway. So back to this question of why. Why do they believe this ludicrous conspiracy? It is currently thought that 50% of Americans believe in the credibility of at least one conspiracy theory. It's a study from University of Chicago. Having knowledge from that study as well as one from the Verge University in Amsterdam, I draw my own conclusion. Flat earthers can be more easily classified as, quote, the governments are lying to all of us, unquote, believers. If you listen to the style of David and Jaron's debates, their general tone of the debate always leads to the government's astronauts, scientists, and supporters all being involved in this giant conspiracy. Their general discreditation of the scientific method on topics of space, as well as reading the studies on neurological disorders, are paramount in my conclusion. Yes, I'm going neurological on your ass. Conspiracy theorists view our universe different than what is generally accepted as normal. Scientists and doctors have been working hard to figure this out, and these recent studies have identified how specific thinking patterns that we all use are off the charts for conspiracy folks. Illusory pattern perception disorder and paranoid delusion, while not always connected together, are the current diagnosis for conspiracy theorists. Illusory pattern perception disorder is defined by the layman as, quote, people who have little or no control over their current situation are far more likely to perceive and develop cognitive patterns internally to explain what they cannot physically see or demonstrate, unquote. Paranoid delusion is a bit more serious than pattern forming. With regards to flat earthers, the piece of paranoid delusion that is harmful to themselves and those around them is the paranoia of a giant worldwide conspiracy and the obsession to prove that they know the truth. I am no doctor, so I encourage you to research the studies yourself and draw your own conclusions. However, the scientific and medical communities seem to have nailed this pretty spot on. There are ways to help people who suffer from these types of neurological disorders, and it doesn't necessarily involve medication. A trained professional psychologist and a good counselor can help immensely. David and Jaron were great guests, and if they would like to come back on a future episode, I would love it. Hopefully they don't take offense to this perspective, but I'm not shying away from it as I am calling it as I see it. You guys are certifiably nuts. Special thanks to Clay Groves with the Fish Nerd Podcast, Dan Cummins with Timesuck, and especially to Brent and John with the Hysteria 51 podcast. You guys all provided great audio for this bonus episode, and Hysteria 51 hooked us up with the introduction to David and Jaron. So thanks for listening to this bonus episode of The Twisted 10, and I hope you guys have a great week. So yeah, neurological disorders, they need help. But it was interesting to read some of those studies because it really did harness in on why they can focus in on certain types of pattern behaviors, more so they being conspiracy theorists, the serious conspiracy theorists. They focus on more patterns than your standard, what would be conventional, citizen, your standard person.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor.
That's good. Cool.
All right. Well, any final thoughts from you, Tack?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it, dude. No, you fucking spot on. Good.
Cool. Well, I do encourage David and Jaron, if you guys listen to this, I do encourage you guys to come back on and we can have chats about this kind of stuff. But that's, it's a difficult subject for us to really, really get too deep down in the rabbit hole on because you guys just are very, what's the word I'm looking for? You're very objective when it comes to taking information in that is scientifically provable outside of what you want to believe. So it's without having, an argument, because I don't want to have an argument on air. I would love to have you guys back on.
Indeed.
All right, buddy. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, let's get the hell out of here. Thanks for listening to this bonus episode. We greatly appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your week, guys.
Yes, sir.